Hey guys, another modified Nerf blaster here. Well, this one's a Lego blaster, not really a Hasbro made blaster, but whatever. This is my modified Big Blast. This is a rather unique Big Blast because you don't actually have to pump it. There is no pump. What it runs on is HPA. If you don't know what HPA is, that stands for high pressure air. It is similar to a CO2 tank with paintball. Similar in the sense that you're just storing potential energy in a tank and releasing it whenever you want, so the user doesn't actually have to output any force other than pulling the trigger, as opposed to a normal Nerf gun where you have to pump it or prime back the spring. You are actually changing that energy into potential energy and then releasing it into kinetic and shooting out a dart. What actually did all the work was the air compressor at the paintball shop. So when you're out on the field, all you have to do is pull your trigger and it goes bang, bang, bang. I will go over the blaster first and then go over the components of the thing. I will not have hyperlinks to location. I bought all of these parts because I bought them at a local paintball shop, but I'll try to describe them as accurately as I can in the description box so you can replicate this project if you'd like. As you saw there, this is a quick disconnect hose here, so I can actually use my hose on multiple blasters. I did have a rapid fire 20 set up to HPA. It malfunctioned because I was stress testing it and I stressed it too far, to put it simply. So I will not do the same mistake with this one because I like this blaster a lot. So to connect it, all you have to do is secure it on and then release air. This has a quick slide on and off valve, so now air is flowing. And it is as easy as pulling the trigger. If you can hear that, that is air being released and then air being pushed back into the air tank from the air tank here. It does take a second to actually refill, unlike a paintball marker, because paintball markers very frequently run at over 800 psi. This is running on about 50 psi, so the air isn't moving quite as fast and the pressure isn't filling into the tank quite as fast, so it takes about a second. Also, the air tank used in this blaster is actually much bigger than in a paintball gun because paintballs are fired out at, again, like 800 psi for a standard gun. So when you have that high of pressure, you don't need the same amount of airflow. With a Nerf gun, we usually work with lower pressures but higher volumes. If that's not making sense to you, I apologize. I don't really know how else to explain it other than explaining it very simply, which I attempted to right there. Anyways, all you need to know if you don't want to understand the technical aspects is you pull the trigger and it works, similar to a paintball gun, not exactly the same, but very, very similar. Modifications to the actual blaster itself are very minimal. All I did was add a PVC Y to the front and then a hopper clip here and a CPVC barrel. The CPVC barrel is not ideal. It is not the right diameter or the length, but I'm packing to move very shortly, and this is the first barrel I found and it fires pretty well. And I've also cut a very clean hole up here in the top for the hopper here. This doesn't function singled because I have a hopper which would allow all of that air to escape out the back. If I wanted to shoot it singled though, you could plug it and just single it, but there's really no point because the range loss with this hopper is less than 5 feet. But this blaster, because it is a single big blast essentially, it's not really single but pretty much, it's shooting about 100 feet flat, which is pretty normal for a big blast and very nice for a blaster overall. Add in the fact that it's semi-automatic without having to pump up a big bladder and then shoot off 5 rounds and repump it. That's amazing. It shoots fairly fast. Rate of fire wise, I don't think you could beat that. Plus you're not actually outputting energy, so for people who are lazy like me, that's awesome. So now I think I covered the actual blaster itself. I'm going to go over my hose and my whole rig here. I will try to cover cost of all of my pieces, but I bought these quite a few months ago, so if my prices are incorrect or whatever, I apologize. The one thing that you have to watch out for is what you put into each blaster, because my tank and all of my hose stuff can go into every gun I make. However, one piece is necessary to be planted into the gun, which is your hose male that goes into your female, giggity. So this piece costs $10 to $15 depending on the brand and all of that. I bought this based on the physical characteristics to fit into my Big Blast, and I didn't actually have to modify my back, so it's in there extremely cleanly. It just looks like a little nozzle hanging out. Bad side is you don't really have a stock, but there's no recoil and it's so light. You don't really need a stock in Nerf, but it is pretty nice to have that hose very cleanly inputted and it's not just a giant hose sticking into the gun. But that's it for the gun for now. I'm going to go over the rest of my rig here. I'll start with the tank. This is an Empire brand tank. Empire is a relatively well-known paintball brand. I don't actually paintball, so I don't have negative or positive feelings for this company, but the tank was very well priced at my local paintball shop. It was roughly 60 bucks, and that came with an air pass to get unlimited air fills for a year, which is pretty cool. Because air fills usually cost a couple bucks to fill up the air. And to get one thing clear, HPA is not CO2, it's not the same thing. HPA is actually all of the air around you, the same chemical compound as like whatever's around you, and then just compressed into a higher pressure. It's the same thing in paintball too. You can use CO2, in paintball, but HPA is liked more by paintballers for consistency and danger issues and all of that. But Nerf CO2 would be extremely dangerous to operate with because that operates at a very cold temperature, and since I'm running on a plastic air tank, unlike paintball, which they use metal internals, the plastic air tank would get brittle and then shatter, and that turns into shrapnel, which would fly into my face if I ran at too high of a PSI. So that would be dangerous. So if you want to make an air tank for your Nerf gun, I'd highly recommend going with HPA and not CO2 if you'd like to live. Continuing through my rig, a lot of this can be molded and changed to however you want it, but I did it a very specific way for my own personal needs. Anyways, this is a 90-degree turn from the nozzle end here of the tank into 1/8 standard tubing. This is my regulator, which is the most important part of my entire rig. Because this tank is a 3000 psi tank and it outputs at about 800 psi. So it's about 800 psi up until this point. This regulator takes it down to 50 to 100 psi. This is a variable regulator here, and this is adjusted just by a little Allen key. You just put in the Allen key here and you turn it left or right or whatever if you want to adjust your output psi. I have adjusted my psi, so I'm shooting at about 100 feet. I could reach a little further and I could obviously shoot softer. But I chose to land on about 100 for the safety of everyone around. That's not referring to like building a bomb, like blowing up because of too much pressure. That's referring to the initial velocity of the dart and not damaging other people. So 100 feet is a pretty clear output range of a Nerf blaster. After the regulator here, which is also a fairly expensive piece, so I forgot prices, this little turn was like 10 or 15. The little tube was a couple of bucks and these connectors were a couple of bucks. The regulator's another fairly expensive piece. This was $50-ish. I think you can get them cheaper online, but I got it at a local shop. And then the last piece here is this whole coil line, which is all one piece. This connects onto here. It has a quick on and off up here, but this doesn't actually apply to my rig. This only applies if you're connecting straight onto the air tank, which I didn't want to do for my regulation reasons. And then the coil line, the purpose of a coil line is to be able to have my HPA tank on my back rather than carrying it on my arms, because I'm weak. I'm used to carrying Nerf guns, which are like a couple of ounces, and I don't want to carry this around like a paintball guy, like connected into the bottom of the gun here like a mag strike. So the coil line is really cool because it stretches and it allows me to hold the gun in my hands and the tank in my back here. So this will stretch out and the air travels through there. And the end here, you have to pay a couple extra bucks to get a hose with this, but I chose to because I wanted it. This is a quick on and off disconnect, which connects onto my air gun really quickly. So I can take it on and off very fast. And then the other thing is a slide on and off to cut the air on. That connects to this, releases air. So that's pushing air out, and then that cuts it off. So I can cut off the air before I pull, and I'm not shooting air everywhere every time I pull my gun off. Sorry, I pull my hose off. And that's not edited, that's the real rate of fire. So that is the blaster firing. I'm really happy with how it shoots. It's shooting about 100 feet flat, and that is adjustable, so I can adjust it down to, well, 0 feet. I have had it not leave the barrel if running on too low of a PSI, and then it can crank up to about 125 feet flat, running on about 100 to 120 PSI, which is uncomfortable. I don't really feel comfortable putting my cheek next to that because eventually maybe the plastic will break. I really don't think it will. But I'd better be on the safe side, and 100 feet is plenty. I don't want to hurt people because it is already a single big blast, and making it semi-auto, I'm going to be able to put a ton of darts down range, which is really cool. So that covers the HPA blaster. It is a great step. I should be working with HPA in the future, but not soon because I'm moving and I have to get rid of a lot of stuff, actually including this blaster. I don't want to see it go, but I will be selling it. So that video will be up in a couple of days. I'm selling off a lot of my modded stuff that hasn't been for sale in the past, and some other stuff. So check out a video in a couple of days for that. All of my modified blasters will be going, the starting price will be the material cost, which is going to be pretty low. And I actually just have to get rid of them, so I really don't care if they even sell for that. At this point, I just need to get stuff away because I'm moving. I'm keeping what Nerf stuff I need to play at local wars, but my modifications will be dropping down. I apologize for the late video here. This blaster has been done for months. It's just been in pieces, and Zalal actually used this shell in a normal air gun at the last war, so it's been in other pieces lately. So it's done, the video's up, yay. And it's going to be for sale shortly. That concludes the HPA blaster. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you want part numbers or anything, I won't be able to give those to you. I'll try to write out some of the stuff for this stuff I've used in the description box, but you're going to have to do your own independent research. I'm not going to spoon feed you a cart and say, hey, buy this and you can build this exact thing. I don't even know the item numbers for a lot of this because I bought them locally and I don't have those receipts anymore. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.